Afternoon, folks. I'm sure you have better things to do than sit here and see stupid things with jails, but I'm going to show you a whole bunch of stupid shit you'd never want to try at home. First, word about stupid. It's not a self-description. And although I say stupid, it's not to say that these are dumb ideas. These are just ideas that I had at home, decided that I would try them. They turned out to be not so bad. So the moral of the talk is, if you try it and it works for you, it's not stupid. It doesn't matter what it is. What you're going to get in this talk, there's very little bad stuff in here, but you might look at something that I say and say, oh, no, that's wrong. That's not going to work that way. Yes, it will. It's just that I'm glossing over the details. I'm going to tell you some things to avoid. You're going to get insights into how my mind wanders just by the things you see on the slides. You're going to get ideas and concepts for future projects, and you're going to get a whole lot of prompts to email me as how I was wrong. What you're not going to get how-to guides or detailed instructions, promises, or anything close to being useful. I'm sorry, but I like to get the disappointment part of the talk over early, otherwise you're just left there hanging, waiting for stuff. I've been using jails for about nearly 25 years now. I'm sure it started before this. Well, it couldn't have because it was 2000, but it's almost 2025 now. So how this works out is you do one thing with the jail, and that was easy. You do another thing, and then you have a few more pieces of software, and suddenly you're giving a talk at EuroBSDcon. What I'm trying to help is you avoiding that path of self-destruction. And it always is one thing leads to another and just builds and builds and builds. So I'm briefly going to go through some of the things that we're going to cover. Acme just runs and runs. FreshPorts is a very favorite project of mine. It's very jail-driven. Database testing. A lot of things I do have databases. I need some way to pull in all the databases and test, make sure they load. And poudriere, because I'm using custom packages. I use poudriere all the time. I do a lot of multiple jails running Postgres. Sometimes I have to have jails within jails for testing. Because I was doing weird stuff like that, I had to modify pkg-audit. And then because I had so many websites at home and needed a web proxy to sit in front of them because there was more than one web server at home. And eventually I said, well, I don't like everyone having my IP address at home, so I'm going to put a web proxy out somewhere. What we're not going, those other things I've already mentioned, these things are mentioned in the talk description. One thing that we'll briefly talk about is Pushover.net because I think it's so cool and it's more useful than SMS or other tools. What we're not going to cover, we're not going to talk anything about jail creation or updating or upgrading or using jail managers or general maintenance of jails at all. That's not what this talk is about. It's about doing stupid things with jails. So, having said I'm not talking about jail management, we're talking about jail management. I started off with manual jails, basically make world into -D, stuff like that. Then I went to ezjail because I loved the idea of being able to upgrade all my jails at once. I migrated from there to iocage and then to iocage, and then I migrated everything back to jail.conf because I hated updating all my jails at once. Now I use something called makejail. And makejail has nothing to do with jail configuration. It's all about jail creation, updating, and upgrading. So first things first, most people when they decide to jail something, they jail a website because they've got a web server and it seems easy. And you just put it into a jail. Then the reasoning behind it is if there's, say, a known vulnerability in Apache or Nginx, the attacker only gets access to the jail. They don't get access to your host. It's rather straightforward. It just works. You do some simple redirection, and that's often someone's first use of port redirection incoming with PF, for example. You just redirect 80 and 443, and it's done. That works great until you wind up with more than one web server in behind your firewall. So you say, well, that was easy. I'm going to put other jail applications in there. Sometimes they go into the same jail, sometimes they go into a new jail, sometimes they have their own IP address, sometimes they're using the IP address of the host. What I like to brag about is, does this work? Yes. That website there has a whole bunch of stuff in it that still uses /user websites, not user local www, because I don't think user local www existed, or I'd never heard of it. But it's been migrated 4 or 5 times over different hosts, and it's still just a jail. This is not about a jail, but it's about keeping people from abusing the things that you have in jails. I use fail-to-ban. I've got it now on 2 different hosts. It can monitor the logs within the jails. It doesn't really matter whether they're on the jails or in the host. At one time, I had so many database servers running that I was just logging stuff from those jails just so that anomalies would turn up and I could see. There'll be more about that later. Now, you might think this is a stupid idea too, but these are all my jail, sorry. Oh, what happened there? Did you go all the way back to the start? You did. There, let's not do that again. So this is a jail, that's a jail, that's a jail. This is data mounted inside that jail. Now, the reason that I do that is so that I can snapshot this file system and back it up separately. That's the main reason. Now, sometimes that begins to be a pain in the ass because you'll stop that jail and you want to modify the data set around that jail, and you can't because something's mounted inside that jail. So how I get around that is I do things like this, which is, this is in your jail.conf, and it says after your jail is created, jail that data set, and then set it, and then mount it, and it's in. And then I have the opposite of these commands when you're stopping the jail. And that I find very useful. And also, because all my important data is in different ZFS file sets, I can just snapshot them and back them up. The script does a ZFS create -r, ZFS snapshot -r, and then basically it mounts all those snapshots, and then it backs up those snapshots, destroys those snapshots, and then your backup's done. I've got scripts in there if you want to see it. Now, because I've got all this stuff, I've got web servers, I've got databases, I need to monitor them. The FreeBSD package repos are great. But however, if you want something like non-standard package configuration, if you go into FreshPorts and look at under configuration items, if you want something different from that, you got to build your own packages. The other advantage I like to building my own packages is that vulns are usually packaged overnight instead of waiting for the normal the normal package repo build loop. And also, if you want different versions of Python, I find that easier too. Then, if these sorts of things meet, you might want to run poudriere. And what do you do with poudriere? I put it in jail. And so poudriere launches jails within jails, so you have jails within jails running all the time. If you're a port maintainer, test port, poudriere test port is a godsend. I started using it in 2014 with FreeBSD 9.2, and 5 years later I went it into jail because I was sick of having it on the host itself, because jailing is what I did. It took a few months to get it to that point, but my latest configuration is that URL if you want to see it. And if you're already running poudriere and it's not in a jail, you'll like it once you get it into a jail. You see how this escalates? We're 20 slides in, and we already have at least 10 jails. Monitoring. I mentioned monitoring briefly. So Nagios since 2010, if it's in a jail, it is in a jail, but it's not a dedicated Nagios jail. I've got these special little options on, these special options for Nagios plugins. And there I mentioned all of that stuff is under user websites because it's such an old installation. Now, when you start monitoring, look at these two scripts. They are included with the periodic secondary scripts that come with package. Use them, and you'll find Vulgen never used to have. And I have the Nagios monitoring scripts for you there to start using them. And when you start using them, you're going to get stuff like this on poudriere, which is basically, these are all poudriere jails. You probably can't read that, but that says package 01. Sorry. Big thumbs. There we go. But all of these are warnings about poudriere jails. So what did I do next? I went and started modifying the scripts that I just showed you about, and now you can use these wildcards to say, don't do any auditing on jails that look like that. pkg-audit is the name of my poudriere jail. So in order to test that script, I needed a jail in a jail because that's how the scripts work. So one of the things that you look for in your rc.d scripts is no jail. And a lot of jails have no jail. A lot of rc.d scripts have no jail in them, which means you can't run it in a jail. So you have to modify the rc.d script to get it to run in a jail. I can't remember which one I got modified upstream so we could run it in a jail. I didn't want to use Beehive because I really needed a jail in a jail. Next. You can find that in there. Okay, now. FreshPorts. Pardon me. When FreshPorts got moved from hardware to AWS, I did a lot of work in creating an ingress jail and a website jail, and the database jail went away because I use RDS on AWS. So I don't have a database jail except on real hardware now. It's nice separation. I can take down the website and the back end still keeps going, or I can work on the back end and no one knows it's down because they're just using the website. When I put Postgres in a jail, it's very easy nowadays. This is literally the whole configuration for my jail, apart from some standard things I'll show you later, but that is it all. And that contrasts vastly from what I used to have to do with jails, when there was a time there where you had to create a different user in each jail, and each one had to have a different UID because of shared memory. System v shared memory. I used to, the expression I called was memory stomping. So those are the options that I had to use way back when on a host named Polo, which is long gone. But those are the options I used back then. These are now my standard jail configuration items. What you see here appears at the start of every single host. And all these variables that start with $1, those are all ideas I got from Michael Lucas's book, FreeBSD Mastery Jails. If you're doing a lot of playing around with jails, I recommend you get that book. So here's the ingress jail for a FreeBSD ports node, for a FreshPorts node. It's just basic stuff. There's that setting jailed of stuff that I showed you earlier. More stuff, details. Here's another stupid thing to do. These are all caching directories. You can see all the cache up there. So list of categories, commits, ports. If a new port comes in and needs to be refreshed, an entry in this directory gets deleted. Why do I do this on disk? Why don't I use something like, I thought of the word caching. Not Redis. Memcached. Why don't you use Memcached? Because this predates Memcached. FreshPorts is about 20 years old, and Memcached, I'm sure, is younger than that. And so the web server jail this is the rest of it, and you can see how I'm unjailing when I'm stopping, and then unmounting so that if I need to fool around with the jail, it's all unmounted. So right now, seeing as we're in Ireland, we're going to talk about the Great Jail migration. I went from thick to thin to vanilla, and I'll sort of go over why I did that. I was tired of having to upgrade all the jails at once, despite that being the initial appeal. When you have 30 or 40 jails, you don't want to spend time upgrading them all at once. So you might upgrade 4 or 5 one night, and you upgrade another 4 or 5 the next night. So I wanted to get away from that, because sometimes host upgrades will break jails because of binary incompatibilities. And then you have to go through and upgrade all the binaries and get them ready. So I stopped doing that. The migration from ezjail to iocage, I had a script for that. That URL will have that script. Pardon me. Then I went from iocage back to plain vanilla jails, mainly because the configuration is straightforward. I became extremely frustrated with configuration items that were hidden within configuration files or in file systems. I just want plain vanilla configuration so that I can see it and modify it and get it right. Not everyone likes plain vanilla jails, but it's turned out to be what I need. Up there, there's a script that I use to go back to plain vanilla jail. Now, make jail, on the other hand, and I'm bragging about this one because I'm a contributor to the project, it's not for configuration. It's just basically to get you going, and you use jail.conf. You can find that there. Now we're going to talk about when I had a lot of websites. That's a tape library, that's a tape library, that's a tape library, that's the switch. These are all web hosts of some type, all running FreeBSD, and there it goes again. Come on, go, go, go. Old tape libraries, I can't remember what that was, but I think that might be more switches, and that's the desk that I used to work at. The problem with this setup is that I have more web servers than I have redirects. So I started doing a web proxy, and I know what I'll do. I'll just create another jail. And these are all the configuration items for all the jails. These are all the websites that were behind this web proxy. Go and look at that one. It's very interesting. It used to be a web camera for my washing machine because it was 2 floors down and I wanted to know when it was done. All the websites use the same SSL. Might see a little bit about that. So basically, after I'd done that, I decided I wanted to have this web proxy not in the basement, but out on a public server in a data center. So instead of keeping a CNAME at home and keeping that up to date, which is a pain in the ass sometimes, I just moved that to a jail in a data center. And now the IP addresses all point to the same place and they're all static. And I sort of trimmed down on the things that you can get to from there because these are only the ones that are in the basement. All the others are in the data center, but these run in the basement. dvl.freshports.org you can't get to because it's no public IP address, but all the others are public. This is what the jail configuration looks like for one of the proxy hosts. And basically, this is all standard throughout all the jails, and then that's the only bit that changes, and that's an entry in a netc host file at the bottom of on the host. So I know in the jail, this is in the etc host file of the jail, and they all have the same headers. So did we go? Yeah, this is the standard SSL. Someone will probably find an error with this and say that's outdated, you should fix it. That's when you email me later. Now, I've got all this ZFS sitting up on systems in the basement. Well, why don't I use it to back up my Mac? This is where time machines for Apple hardware come in. And I forget who first did this. It might have been I forget who I get the idea from. I think it might have been Mark Felder. This is a configuration. Don't bother to read it, but it's not very long. You can get it from one of my blog posts, but you can see that I'm backing up all the various hosts. They each have their own login. They each have their own user ID, and it just works. The problem with all these websites and hosts is, how do I know when I need to patch curl or nginx? I'm not going to SSH into each host and find out. So in the morning when a new vuln comes in, poudriere builds it, but how do I know where I need to upgrade it? SamDrucker knows because he gets all the packages. You can find that at this location, but this is how it works. I run a query like that and say select from host with package nginx. That's a list of all the hosts that have that package and the version that's installed on there. Then you can run this through. You can run this query to other scripts and just have it do something. But what I do is I take the host names and CSSHX to it and package upgrade. It's very light. It just needs curl and Joe, and it maintains a database. So where am I putting all this code? I'm writing all this code to support these jails. I got to put it somewhere. Where do I put it? I put it in a jail. Get.langille.org sits in a jail in the basement. It runs nginx. That's really the only main process that runs, and it's been very reliable for me. I've never had to restart it because it's stopped. I considered GitLab, but it seemed way too complex to configure and set up. Gitea in comparison was very short in order to get it running. I can't recall any other things that I considered at the time. Now, you get all this stuff running. Do you know it's running? Because how well is it running? How many people are going through the website? So I started getting into LibreNMS, which is a fork of Observium. And basically what it does is you install SNMP on your host, and it pulls everything from there through extends. Step one, create a jail, install LibreNMS into it. It works great in a jail. There's nothing special required. It produces way more graphs than you're ever going to need. It now includes monitoring for poudriere, ZFS, disk I/O, CPU usage. It will soon include jail by jail metrics, so you can see what the jail is consuming in terms of CPU, and it just uses PS for that. It's not using anything special. Look for something called OSLV monitoring. It's in LibreNMS now, but the extend that you run on the host is not quite yet working. I've been talking with the developer on a regular basis. So this is failed to ban from LibreNMS. Ooh. That's failed to ban, graph by LibreNMS through SNMPD. And that's on the FreshPorts production server from about, well, the date's up there, the 15th of this month. So I get all these websites. You saw that list of websites, including Dan's Dirty Laundry. How do I get search for them? So I could run a Let's Encrypt client on each website. No, that's ridiculous. Why would I install the same software on 10 different websites? Well, it's more than 10. It's more like 20 or 30. So I took the lead from what Peter Wem did for the FreeBSD cluster. I have Let's Encrypt running on one central host, which has no outside connectivity to the internet. I then wanted to figure out how to get all the certs out to other locations. And this jail talks to a local DNS hidden master, which is also not on the internet. It drives the slaves that are on the internet. So, pardon me. That's the software that you want to look at. It's also in in my Gitea installation. Good. No. Anvil. If you ever watch the Roadrunner cartoons, the Acme store delivers the anvils, and that's why I've called it Anvil. The only proviso for this solution is you must distribute the key manually. Everything else goes out automated. Certs are public by nature. It doesn't really matter. They're going to be on your website. They're going to be distributed. They're also in the public transparency list. So if you don't want anyone to know about it, don't use Let's Encrypt. Use a private CA. This solution of using DNS hidden master means that services that don't have port 80 or port 443 available can be using it. So I've been using it now for 7 years, and this is sort of how it works. Let's see if I can not roll back. We've got the search jail, which then has a nullFS entry into the rsync jail, and the public website will rsync the certs down there, and then the client pulls them down via curl and then installs them. And it might sound really weird. How can your client install all the certs? It does it through very limited sudo permissions. And once you set up the configuration file, this command will tell you the sudo permissions that it needs. So Anvil runs as a non-privileged user with sudo permissions to do very discrete things. Sorry. Those are the blog posts that you'll find more than anything you would ever want to read about this stuff. The next most fun thing was Bind 9.18. When it came out, I wanted to try it before I put it out into the world. So what I did is I took my existing jail that had a copy of Bind 9.16, copied it, created a new jail.conf entry, and started it up with the same zone files, and it just worked. Done. Then I deployed it, didn't have to do anything special. I think I blogged about it there, if you want to know more about it. So this is what one of the hosts at home looks like. This is my main development host. So it has all this stuff running on it. DNS1 is internal DNS. This is internal mail. Cliff is in Cliff Clavin from Cheers. My main database servers at home. Main package server, main development server, all the names are sort of self-explanatory. Bacula, which we didn't talk about, that's the LibreNMS, that's the search stuff, that's the Git repository I told you about, and page 2 of the jails is over here. Unify, that's the ubiquity stuff, that's the Unify controller running in the basement, and you can see a complete list of everything at that URL. This is the other main host, which is mostly just storage, and the TM line 9 down there, that's the time machine that I talked about earlier. So now I've got all these websites around the world. There's about 7 or 8 hosts in various data centers. I've got to somehow back up all the databases that are on those hosts. So what I did is I created a read-only user, both at the Unix level and at the Postgres level, that can dump every single database that's on that host. So it dumps all those databases into the remote jail. Then it calls home to the remote jail to say, hey, listen, this is all ready. The remote jail then SSHs to runs rsync from the jail in the basement to the remote server, and rsyncs all the jails down. Why I use rsync is because it's plain text dumps, and it'll be faster than trying to copy everything down. Rsync's very good on Postgres plain ASCII dumps. So when I talk about home in the basement, it's a database jail called dbclone, and it sits in the basement, does a lot of churning. And this is literally what the script does, is it removes the Postgres data directory at the beginning, does a db init, loads up all the databases, reports any errors, and then just does it again for the next host. And it takes about 6 or 7 hours every day to run all that. And all the scripts for doing that is in that directory. Now, we get to the pinnacle of my stupidity on the next, on this slide. I started having this error message on one of my remote hosts. And I had recently converted this host to use DMA, not SendMail. I logged in and there's 7,852 SendMail processes running on this host and from the jails. There's 15,000 queued emails. All the jails are trying to contact the host on port 25, like they should. They're configured to do that because they're all running DMA. But the host was also running DMA. DMA doesn't listen on port 25. The phone calls are coming from the host. All this closed port stuff is my own action. It's not someone else trying to contact my host, it's me. So you can see all the fun in there. So lastly, Pushover.net. It's founded and run by a BSD person. If I'm not wrong, it's an open BSD person. I signed up and paid a small fee under $10 several years ago, and it's funded everything I've wanted to do since then. The reason I like it is because two reasons here. Someone asked, how is this not better? How is this any better than SMS? Someone else in the security field said, well, SMS is not encrypted and can be intercepted, whereas Pushover.net, it's an application and it's end-to-end. You can have a client on your web browser, you can have something on your phone, it can send something to your email address, it can send you an SMS message, but there's all kinds of clients for all kinds of applications, and it's been so cheap and reliable for me over the years. And one of the things I've really liked about the fact is that UPS losing power or water detected in the basement, it can just send it out. And it doesn't need anything special because it just goes out through your existing network. And if you need to, you can hook up a little SIM card to something and get it to send it out. So that's all my stupid things. Does anyone have any questions? Because we went through a lot of material in a very quick period of time. That was this is slide 68. So, do we have a mic? Yeah. There's one coming.
If I saw your ZFS pool layouts correctly, you keep your persistent data as a child data set under your base system plus ports. So does that mean that you can't replace them? Or do you have some tool to untangle them and then replace them?
Sometimes the data it's mounted under there, but it's not a direct child of the jail itself. It's mounted somewhere within the jail structure, but it's not on the same tree. What you might have seen is data 02 and data 03, and it might have looked like it was all the same, but I hope it's different. Next question.
So it's two questions actually. How do you get remote access? So are you using dynamic DNS or fixed IP address or a whole -8 you bought?
Remote access to all the jails, all the hosts?
To your hosts. So you said your Unix at home hosts. And to that, are you using a Nginx proxy to redirect it into the different jails?
Yeah. All the jails in the basement are accessed through an Nginx proxy in a data center. So basically, you're out there, all the public IP addresses point to that Nginx proxy, which then goes through, I think, an open VPN tunnel.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
To the basement. There's another proxy there that then distributes it out.
Okay.
Or it may have direct access to it depending on how history has evolved it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
And
Thanks.
how all the hosts are on another VPN that I can get access to from my laptop. And that's headquartered in the basement. I would like to put it somewhere out there once, but I haven't. Because everything evolved from the basement. Another question? Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, wait. Thank you.
Sorry. When did you start using jails?
Start?
First time you touched jails? Was it on the first slide? Sorry, I might have missed it.
I did say it, but I can't remember it, so I can't expect you to. So 2000.
4.1, okay, cool.
2000.
So did you ever hit?
According to my blogs,
Yeah,
it
cool.
was 2000. So they came out in 4.0 and I started in 4.1.
At which point did you hit so many jails that you started getting performance issues? Or rather, have you ever?
I did, because all the jails were running the same scripts, all the same periodic scripts. And I tracked that down with the help of Josh, someone remember his last name? Petzel. Josh Petzel helped me. Does that name sound familiar? Worked for IX Systems? Yeah. He helped me track down why my hosts were grinding to a slog every night at 3 a.m. And it was just because, you know, we're talking about hosts, desktop quality hosts, about 8 or 9 years ago. And they were just grinding to a halt in the middle of the night when I wasn't using them. But it meant that all my metrics were off and everything else disappeared. And all it took was increase some working memory and put a bunch of entries in etcperiodic.conf in all the jails to turn off the stuff. Because there's no reason to index all the NSUIG scripts and stuff like that, or don't have to run locate in every jail, stuff like that. So it was all of those types of things, all starting off at once. That's what hit. The two hosts I showed you, the R730s, they have like 48, 72 threads. They run at idle. It's only when I build packages that it spikes up to like 40% CPU load. And they just fly. Jails don't require a lot of overhead because there's no kernel. It's just another SSH session and stuff running.
Use the host's cron to run the periodic scripts in xargs-p.
I don't. The one thing that I do like doing on the host that affects the jail is fail to ban. I find that so clever and sneaky because even if someone is in the jail, they have no idea that you're watching it because you're monitoring the log from outside the jail and they have no proof. They have to be very clever to know that they're even in a jail. I don't know who gave me the idea to monitor FreeBSD jails using fail to ban from the hosts, but loved it. Okay, that it? Any more? Thank you, appreciate it.